Welcome to the Unconventional Path, Entrepreneurship and Innovation Stories and Ideas. I'm Bela Musits.
And I'm Mike Wasserman.
Hey, today's guest on the podcast is Steve Ovitt. So Steve founded Wilderness Property Management after a 30-year career as a New York State Department of Environmental Conservation forest ranger. His company works with municipalities and private organizations to provide recreational access to public and private properties while preserving the wilderness character of the land. That was a mouthful, but I tell you, I found our conversation really interesting. And the other interesting thing about this from an entrepreneurship perspective is that this is a great example of a second career. So Steve retired from being a forest ranger. He had some great skills, and he figured out a way to take that skills and knowledge that he earned in that, or learned in those 30 years, and apply it in this new business. So I thought that was a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, sounds totally cool, Bela. So let's get right to it. Your interview with Steve Ovitt.
Hi, Steve. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, it's great to be here. Interesting. We'll see where the conversation takes us.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to this, Steve. So tell us a little bit about your business.
Well, the business started after I retired as a New York State forest ranger, which gave me a whole lot of unique experience and background to get into this, along with my education and stuff. So the business is about developing high quality recreational experiences, outdoor recreational experiences, just taking trails and making them so that people experiencing the trail for human-powered recreation have a great experience, whether it's hiking or mountain biking or skiing, Nordic skiing, backcountry skiing, that kind of thing, and in maximizing that experience for them. Today's, a modern experience. There's a lot of other experiences out there. Well, that's just sort of a hole through the woods, and you can do it, but it doesn't mean that it's truly a good, high quality experience on a trail that is environmentally sound. And that's the big key, how to make these things be environmentally sound also. So,
Yeah. So that sounds like a sort of relatively new business area.
Yeah, when I retired, my wife and I looked at the different things, and we started this business. And when you do business, it is just business in itself is a job, and you need to come at it like that. So we had a business coach, a real powerful business coach. Of course, you're low on funds when you start a business, so I was trading work with him. I was an advisor for a startup company, and we traveled some to do that. And then he coached us through the nitty gritty of really running a business. Took an entrepreneurial course on developed a business plan, all those objectives, so that we had a foundation of knowledge to run a successful business. We tried to take some of that guesswork out of it, and so that was the beginning, and that plays out till today. I firmly believe that's why we're in business today. So.
And is this a seasonal business?
Well, the business covers outdoor recreation development. Okay, so that means everything from discussing with landowners, land managers, recreation on their property, to developing trail systems specific to a property, adapting trail systems that are already in existence to a higher quality level of trail, creating environmental soundness, and just offering professional services to the recreation industry. And all of our business for the last basically 10 years has been from concept to design to construction. We don't just go out there and, oh, here's a request for proposals or quote on a trail to build. No, we connect with the landowners, look at the property, look at the recreation, what their interest. Sometimes they don't even know. We have to get that out of them. We have to work with them so that they can understand what's possible and what they really want, because it's pretty unique. Not everybody's familiar with all these forms of recreation.
Yeah.
We work with them to do that, and then develop a trail system that meets their interests and their what they want to be exposed to. Some of this recreation can be pretty traumatic and stuff, and there's different risk tolerances and stuff. Luckily, we live in New York State with great protections for landowners and human-powered recreation out there. You're just really well protected as a landowner in allowing uses like that. I feel it's one of the best things that our state did right. There's a lot of difficulties in there when it comes to business and stuff, but that's a good one for the recreation industry.
Yeah. So let's say I'm a landowner. Let's say I have a couple hundred acres of forest right now, maybe a stream through it. And I'd like to open it up so that people can use it and, kind of hike through it. Like you said, human powered things. And so if I reached out to you, take me through sort of what that process would be like.
Well, it would be talking to you about your interests for the property, and then looking at the property itself, and then where is that property located? How does it fit in the greater environment, in the greater world of community? Is it close to a community? Is it interconnected to a community, or is it an isolated parcel out? And is your wish for your own recreation or for the public's recreation? And how we can do that. We actually have, my wife and I look at each project request. We think of it more as partnering with a client. Like I said before, we don't just go out and bid a job just to have a job. We look at a project. Does this project offer really good human elements, either for an extended family to be able to recreate and to come together, or for the public to participate? And where does it lie? If that project is close to a community and we can make a connection in a community, can just be a gathering of houses in an area, where there's sort of a grouping of people. It doesn't have to be a city, a village, something like that. Even an individual development is a community. Area around a campground with a group of camps and stuff. Are we that community? If we can create trails adjacent and connected to communities to get people out into the woods, and those people have kids, give them the experience to get out, that scores high on our seriousness of looking at the project. Are we willing to do the effort it takes to do this, and do we think that person, client, has will be a good partner in this, trustful, that kind of thing. Business, when you can do it based on trust, is much more satisfying. It's than just trying to make a buck.
Right.
There's a lot of different ways. We've never advertised, and it's just been word of mouth, network. People call us because they've experienced some of our work, and they know our work, and so they're asking knowing about what it is that they could get.
Yeah.
And it becomes much more of a partnership to make a project a success. And the likelihood of success then goes way up. Way up.
Excellent. Excellent.
Um,
So this sounds like a pretty specialized skill set to sort of plan out a project like this. As you said, walk the land, figure out, where are good places to put the trail, where's not a good place to put the trail, and then actually building the trail, in an environmentally friendly and sustainable way, so you don't have washouts and all that kind of stuff. So where does one get skills like that?
well, I'll tell you, a great place to start is right at some of the local colleges here in the Adirondacks. The Ranger School, the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry has a forest technology program in Wanakina, in the Adirondacks, known as the Ranger School. Paul Smith has its program. Some of the community colleges have programs, and the environmental. So the actual trail and recreation and environment thing, that's a great place to start, especially at that technology level, because it gives you a hard skill set. You know how to measure a watershed from looking at a map. You can tell volumes and drainages, first order, second order, third order, and what's related with them. You know what a forest road construction entails, cuts, fills, surveying for alignments and grades. Those kind of things are very helpful. And then having true construction experience, actually knowing how to build something, and run equipment and that. I grew up on the family farm, from the time I was 12, I was driving equipment. And by the sound of it, whether it's working right or working wrong, and you knew where you were going to get stuck in the field because you didn't want your grandfather to be chewing you out because you got the tractor stuck,
Right.
So you knew where you started to get an idea where subsurface groundwater seeps were and those kind of things. You start combining that with an environmental education, and you take it to the next level. And then a lifetime of forest ecology work in the woods, looking at trees, knowing which species have which type of roots, whether they're near the surface or whether they're going down deep into the ground, where bedrock's coming up, where those subsurface seeps are generally located. Anybody can see running water, or standing water at that right time of season. But can you look at a place and know that there was standing water there, but now it's July and August and it's gone? Can you tell by the color of the leaves on the forest floor or the vegetation? And environmentally, trail locations, you can avoid the most critical areas. We look at the heads of those drainages, and we either cross where it's delineated and we can get onto rock and do that where it's very small. And then we scout way around the upper watersheds, because that's where, true water quality starts. And so that's the planning phase that's out there. You can, develop the trails and the resources around the more sensitive areas of the environment, and and then just narrow down when you need to get from point A to point B, and stuff. So basically, it's working with the environment and the flow of the land and the critical things that are associated with that, rather than just getting the human mindset that we want to do this. We're going to take a piece of paper, draw all this, and then we're going to go out on the ground and impose it. Okay.
I see. Yeah.
I see that all the time. You can engineer. They want to engineer all this stuff. Well, what they're doing is they're creating environmental damage doing that, because they're not putting the environment first. and they're creating much greater budgets, and then their success rate is going to be lower because they're creating their obstacles to their success rather than looking at what the ground's offering you to offer the recreationist, and build your trail to build the trail for the site that the site gives you. And
Yeah.
that experience is unique to that area. Every place is a little bit different. Show it off. That's the whole idea of being out there in the environment. Experience that environment that's there, not the human imposition onto the environment.
Right.
So yeah, you got me going now.
No, this is perfect. This is perfect, man. I'm learning all sorts of stuff. Right. So if I summarize what you said, I think what I heard was that one of the great things here is that you take advantage of, or advantage maybe is the wrong word. You utilize the land to help you figure out where the best place to put the trail is, as opposed to just drawing a straight line on the map and getting out your surveyor's equipment and this is where the trail's going. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So basically, here's my definition: the difference between a trail and a road. A trail goes around the larger trees and larger rocks and undulates with the micro topography of an environment. A road, well, it goes through those things. Okay. Yeah. It just blows through those things. And so that is why there is a totally different experience when you establish a well-designed trail than when you try to utilize roadways. And if you've traveled this country and the parks, the parks around this country, back in the day when they first started having automobiles and going into parks and stuff, they actually had a thing called auto trails. Of course, these vehicles traveled 30 miles an hour, and you changed the tire every 30 miles, and you crabbed around. And when you get onto those, they're very narrow. Most people are uncomfortable driving them. They're next to the ledges, and they're curving and twisting and stuff like a trail. They couldn't. They didn't have the ability to just blow the mountain apart at that time, and they knew that wouldn't give the experience. So, so think of trails like that. And in our environment is, especially here in the Adirondacks, is so incredible and it's so diverse because the area is so large and the geology is different in many different places that, why not show it off? Why not? This place has big pine trees and gravel and stuff like that. And this other place, well, they've got a lot of birch and red maple and spruce and fir coming in and ledge rock exposed and stuff. Well, that's a unique experience. This place has big erratics and has multiple streams going through it, each one, and even a grove of 4 or 5 trees, a certain species of a certain size or growing in a certain way with an understory. That can be, a unique environmental experience. I call those intermittent destinations. So a trail is a connection. A good trail is a connection of these intermittent destinations. So your experience along the way is variable. You don't have big sites. Rail trails are great. They get people out there.
Yeah.
But the difference, there's a really big difference in when you use recreation as a form of exercise, or you focus more largely on the form of recreation you're doing, than when you're experiencing the environment. And I'll try to clear that up for you if you want. And so if you're on a rail trail and you're on a bicycle and you're moving at the speed of a bike, you're going much faster than you're hiking. So you're not in that same space as long. And then it varies because of your speed. Skiing is faster too, even if you're doing that. So those places are great for that. But I have walked 99-mile trail corridor from Tahoz to the edge of the park in Corinth, and along the Hudson River, looking at trail location. So probably one of the few people that have actually walked the river from the beginning to where it poured out of the Adirondacks. And when you get on those rail lines and you're walking and you can see a half, 3/4 of a mile ahead of you, and you're out in the beaten sun, well, it's a marginal experience. But you put yourself on a bike or skiing in the wintertime and you're kicking along, it's a great experience.
Right, right.
So, but that's totally different than the other experience. So I'll take this one step farther, in that when you go for your mountain bike ride on your trail, half of your experience is about the recreation that you're doing with that bike. The loading and unloading of the suspension. That's where the endorphins are released. Every time you come in and out of a turn and you load that, unload it. It's the same thing with skiing, turning, going in and out of a turn, surfing, all those things. You get an endorphin release from that weightlessness in that moment of flow between there. So 50% of your experience is about that. 50% is about the environment and where you're at. When, so the active recreations like that are split more like that. If you're walking, hiking, then it's 50 to 25% about the destination, and then more about the environment along the way. So you need to understand the recreations. Why are you hiking? Most people are hiking to go to a destination. And that's when they're on a hiking trail. A walking trail around the community, most people are walking either for a social experience with someone after dinner, or just to find peace. It's an act of yoga,
Right.
a walk in a community trail around it. And then when people are biking, or skiing, they're looking for that experience. So yeah, I delve into these things a little deeper and spend
That's excellent. That's excellent. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the business. So my question for you is, did you just wake up one morning, after you retired and said, I got to do something and this is what I'm going to do? Sort of, where did the initial idea for embarking on this business come from?
Well, I had an incredible experience and career as a ranger. I really did. I maximized the potential. Did wildfire to the highest level that anyone in this state has ever done, as far as leading wildfire operations for a national level, and around the country. Just it was awesome to build through a career to do that. Well, if you're in charge of wildfire operations, it's like when you're getting up there and you've got dozens and dozens of fire engines and hundreds of people working for you, and airplanes layered up 3 levels, dropping retardant, and God knows how many helicopters. Well, that's quite an experience. And you worked your way all the way from that grunt firefighter, in Yellowstone in 1988, looking at the biggest fires at the time that ever happened. Working there to where at the end of my career, I was leading these fire operations around the country, like that. But it comes at a price. There is tremendous levels of responsibility. There's the highest level of risk short of going to war, the environment and the amount of people that you're putting in positions where they could get seriously hurt or killed. And then you look at the regular ranger job and see all that search and rescue, all those late nights, all of that risk, hanging out of the helicopter, running the airboats in the white water, hanging off a ledge on a rope. So at 50, I was like, I can see that I'm not going to be as good as I was. It was a great career. I could see how changes, and when you're with an organization over long term, there's changes that you didn't sign up for.
Mm.
And with the government, you can stay. I call it the full pay option, and keep working and not be satisfied and not do as good a job. Or you can walk away, and while you're still at the top of your game. It was a hard call, but I walked away. I wanted to walk away with my head high.
Hmm.
And knew, from being allowed to do all these things when I was a ranger and stuff, that, hey, I can go out there and make something of that. I was given all these opportunities to learn and work and communicate and all this professional development training, that I should be able to go out there and do something. And in this case, I looked at what was the most positive feedback I ever got from that career. And yeah, there's times when literally saved whole communities. If there's time where you literally save somebody's life or multiple lives, no questions, hands down, you're doing that. But the amount of smiles and the amount of people that were happy and said, "Oh, I love that trail that you did when I was a ranger," and stuff, and just seeing the smiles and the positive feedback, geez, and with the construction background and everything else, how could you not go there and reduce that stress? Those things, yeah, my family and myself sacrificed, put my life on the line a lot of times, for real. This isn't no joke, it's, when you're doing it, it was
Right.
the real thing. And this was a way to continue doing without that level.
Nice. Nice.
So
Boy, that was really well said. That
that's
was
where it
really well
began,
said, Steve.
that's
Yeah. So what was like, so you decide to start this business. What was like the first 3 to 6 months like?
well, first you gotta believe in yourself enough to make the change, in life. And I just did. I retired, and in order to help me do that, and it's very perceptive of you to know that shift is huge to getting this business started, is I had a friend that was at building a housing development out in Watertown for housing. Not in Watertown, Lowville, I'm sorry. And a lot of it was for the Fort Drum officers and stuff. So I got a job as a construction manager out there. I go out there, had a condo 3 days a week, housing provided, and straighten out all the things in the finely engineered plan for this development that, doesn't matter how good you draw them lines and how much you say your LIDAR is, water doesn't flow uphill unless you pump it.
Yeah.
So I went out there and, as a construction manager, sorted out the issues to keep this housing development to go. And you learn a lot of things when you're just plain building, working with the grading, hydrant lines and roadways and that. In that 4-month period of time, while I'm out there, I'd go out there, and we had the business coach going. We had this idea get started, and I started writing a business plan.
Mm.
And then when I come home, we go over it with my wife, because I had that time set aside. I'm out there alone.
Yeah.
And then we go over and we talk about it, meet with the business coach, take the class, the entrepreneur class, working on the business plan. And in that 6-month period, that's what we did. And then made the evolution, left that job, and decided on an S corporation was the way to go for us, an S corp. And there's lots of, that's a big decision people need to be conscientious of in their business. Look at the things that you need in your life. Different type of business organizations offer different opportunities for retirement contributions, payroll,
Right.
and that stuff. It's very important decision how you form your business. And so that's how we got through that. And then it was utilizing the network.
Yeah.
Just let word out there, go to meetings, be active in planning and recreation and communities. And the thing that happened there, it was quite an interesting evolution that you learn about business, is you have to let the business guide where you go. Once again, it's like the environment. You try to force your business into what you want, your odds of success are going down. But if you're open and keep your parameters wider, let the business choose where it wants to go, as long as it fits your moral and ethical and personal wishes. So that's what we did over the next 2 years. But what we found was that me being me and my background, my wife was the better business person. I'm the operations guy. That's what I did in all those fires. My biggest business weakness, the weakness is the fact that given something, I'm going to make it work, make it happen, make success. It has to be a success for the business in order to stay in business. So my wife is the one that took the lead on the business and reading over the proposals, making sure that we were doing work that would keep us in business. And so it really, really was important to the business to have that view and to talk to our employees that way. Listen, we need this work done here. We're not imposing anything, but this is when we need to be done. And miraculously, when you have that date and that schedule, the jobs get done, and they like the work. We're a small business, so it's pretty much like a family business. We have to deal with each other's idiosyncrasies. We have to accept that. We have to work together. We have to be happy to do that. If someone's got a personal commitment, then the rest of us need to work around that to make this happen.
Right.
And then we're all happy to go have a beer and wings at the end of the week or when we see one another.
Yeah. What's the typical sort of duration of a project that you guys do?
Well, one of the things, because I spent basically 30 years working for the state, and the state has all kinds of resources. They really don't need our resource. They should just do whatever it takes, which maybe they aren't doing, to actually put resources in play to do their work. They have access to that. But towns, counties, land trusts, and other organizations, they don't have as easy access to those kind of funds or that kind of resources. So we really try to offer these small Adirondack towns and the land trusts, all those things that I just listed out there, access to high quality, sustainable, environmentally sound recreation development, and in that, and then we work with them. So it's really, their budgets, as long as we can fiscally stay in business and work, and that means it's work. It is hard work. And there's a reason why there aren't trails in most of these places. If it was reasonable to put trails there, they'd be there. Okay. And this is the only reason that there's a professional trail builders around is because, well, first off, if it was easy, they'd have done it. And if it was a little bit harder than easy, then some volunteers would have done it. And so it didn't get done because it was a job.
Right.
And so, um, so you need to bring skills to the table, tools to the table that can work in those environments, those much more difficult environments.
Right.
And that. So that's who we work for. We work smaller jobs. We work within budgets of those communities, in their grant forms and stuff, rather than going after, the really big jobs or working with the state. The state has access to its own resources.
Yeah. Yeah. So, sometimes businesses that provide a product, you guys provide a product,
Mhm.
and they do that for a number of years. And then this goes back to your statement of let the business guide you to
Mhm.
where it wants to take you. Have you guys also now started doing, I call maintenance, after 5 years of use, you come in and you're going to refresh the trail. Is there that aspect to this business as well?
Yes, and we've worked with our long-term clients. We got a client we've been working for 10 years, new phase every year. Um, and multiple clients with 4, 5, 6 years. And really, because the trails are sustainable, um, to go in there, it's uh, there's there's little maintenance, but it needs some. It needs somebody there. So what we do is we go in and do what we call improvements. Yeah, you need to clean out some drainages, make this one bigger or something like that. But we're putting in, if it's a mountain bike trail, more berms, rollers, features into there, and basically improvements to that trail. And hiking trails, same way, just more durability. Uh, we as humans need to be not quite so vain with the environment. There's things that in the environment you're not going to be able to read out there. I don't care what kind of instruments and how many computers you hook up to the earth, it's not going to give you everything that it needs. um, so the soils, so there'll be places where you need to add stepping stones and rock armoring and stuff that's there. Also, um, there needs to be an understanding of most of our natural surface single track trails. That's what most people think of when they think of a trail. And that just means the dirt that's there.
Yes.
Okay. And so you're utilizing the soil and rock right there on the site. We can't change that. It is what it is. And with a natural surface trail, if it gets utilized when the the weather and the environment isn't in its best form, when springtime, right now,
Right.
mud season,
Mud season. Yeah.
okay, so we can't change mud season. We do not want to change mud season. We need to celebrate mud season because it means that we have frost in our ground. Our ground is freezing, doing its natural thing. On the periphery of the Adirondacks, the reason the snow comes and then goes is they don't have frost in the ground in a lot of places anymore because of climate change and stuff. It's slowly reducing the amount of frost in the ground, just like ice in the lakes. And so we keep our snow base here because our ground freezes. Okay, when that ground starts to thaw out, the ground, it starts from the top down, from the surface down. And so if it thaws out 3 or 4 inches, there's still basically an impermeable sheet of ice and underneath there. So any soil on top of that is basically a soup. Okay. And it's going to displace. So we have mud season, and then eventually the frost will give away somewhere, and that water will start draining out of that soil, and it'll start drying up. And it'll do that in different places depending on the aspect and stuff. And there'll be frost in some places later than others, so there'll be muddy spots, and then they'll dry out too. And then the same type of thing happens when you get large precipitation events, rain. The soils get wet, they become pliable. Now, an important aspect here for everyone to understand, and they'll be able to visualize this if they hike any trail now, is when that soil is pliable because it's wet and you step on it, you're going to displace it a certain amount. And you displace until you hit something that's not pliable, root or a rock. So over time, you're going to displace that soil, and roots and rocks will show up in the trail. Now, that's just from the weight. If that trail wasn't designed and built well, sustainably, then that trail is also getting erosion. So there's two different things going at work here. One is displacement from weight, just pushing down on pliable soil until it hits something hard, and then the soil sort of pushing out to the sides. The other is erosion, when you didn't put enough drainage in that trail. And or you don't have the right cross trail drainage that's keeping water on the trail. This is where sustainable trails work and do, but you can't overcome our natural environment of mud season in the spring and then a little bit of mud season in the fall before it freezes up. You get sort of the same kind of thing going on. So you need to acknowledge your environment, and that's when we should just sort of go do something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this goes on, leads into, how do you make a trail more sustainable? Okay, you can either make it solid rock. I actually had a doctor of trailology, basically. The guy's got his doctorate in this, been studying the Appalachian Trail for 10 years. And he's given this talk and everything to a bunch of us professionals, and says, and his two grad students working with him, that rock is the most durable surface. And I says, oh, that's pretty good. That guy could actually maybe become a farmer if he kept it up for another 50 years. And then I asked him, I says, well, why don't you make a chart that shows the different soils with the amount of rock showing in it? Because, we want to introduce as much rock into our trail treads as we can for durability. And each soil has a different content of that. But you use a piece of machinery versus hand building. When we're building trail with a mini excavator, just barely over 3 feet wide, and when we're digging drainages, when we're building trail, we're taking the soil. The idea is not just to build that drainage, is we're mining soil from that drainage to make it low enough to catch water and get it off the trail. And we're mining that mineral soil and putting it on the trail tread. We're mining the backslope. We have proprietary techniques and stuff for this. Mining backslope soil, mineral soil, and putting it on that trail tread. So we're building up our trail treads with durable soil. So we are creating a much greater sustainability than you could if you just remove the normal overburden down to mineral soil, and then that soil compacts down to the roots and rocks over time and stuff. So we're adding, up to a foot of soil on there.
Yeah.
And we're adding decades of life, to that trail in that process. And in the process, we're making bigger and better drainages, more frequent drainages, and it's much more natural because we have the only impact to the site is the actual width of the trail and the drainage.
Yeah.
So they're not destroying off the site. So that's a very detailed sort of deal, but it's important to trails and the environment.
Yeah. Super. Hey, Steve, we've been chatting for over 45 minutes here. So I want to start wrapping this up. Here's my last question. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yes. most of your listeners that are going to listen to this and are recreationists and stuff should think about how much they value that recreation. And if we truly value that recreation, then we will treat our outdoor recreation like we do the other valuable things in our communities, our bridges, our roads, our sewer and water systems, all of those things. And especially in a place like the Adirondacks with these small communities with this incredible recreation resource. And why are they struggling? It's because we've treated the recreation infrastructure like it was just a way to give some kids something to do or somebody to just volunteer to do. We didn't look at it like this is as critical to our communities,
Right.
because we're a recreation-based community as all that other infrastructure. Then it starts making sense to you why we have had a very difficult time maintaining communities within this incredible recreation destination.
Yeah.
And we deserve, the people of this state deserve as good a recreational infrastructure as the people of any state in this nation. If you're in Boulder, Colorado, or Sacramento, California, or Bend, Oregon, you go out there and you recreate and go, wow, look at these trails and stuff. Well, we deserve that too. I'll give you, our environment is much more difficult, but we need to value it. Maybe not have as much, but focus near our communities, make our communities more healthy, focus that there, leave our wildernesses alone. That's the wilderness. Put this recreation where the people can get at it instead of it developing it at the end of every road out in the middle of nowhere. So there's no recreation-based economy with it. You just drive there, do it, and then leave. No, make it attached to the communities. Focus on the recreation around communities, and protect our wilderness and protect our people. We're protecting the wilderness by taking some pressure off it, and we're protecting the people by giving them better, healthy lifestyles and in a happier way of life in their community.
Yeah, that was great way to wrap up this podcast, Steve. So if people want to reach out to you, how can they best get a hold of you, Steve?
Our website says, don't contact us unless you're a current or prior client. But they do anyways. It doesn't slow them down. Yeah, the website for Wilderness Property Management, WPM Trails, is the way to get a hold of us. And that's you can they'll just have some fun looking at the website. It's got some stuff on it. We don't, like I said, we don't advertise or push too much, but it has what's necessary there.
Very good. I will make sure that information is in the show notes. Steve, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed chatting with you and learning about all of the various subtle but important aspects of the business that you guys do. Yeah,
I tried to focus on the things that people wouldn't normally think about, and but I think are very important. Our environment and our ecology and respect of that is, we're lucky to have it, and so we should enjoy it and respect it.
Yeah, and it's wonderful that the New York State and the United States and the world has people like you who are devoted to these types of things, because it certainly makes the world a better place. Thanks again, Steve.
All right. It was fun. All right, we'll see you.
Bela, that was fascinating. I mean, this is a business that I never really considered. And I've used these types of trails many times in upstate New York when I lived there, all across North America, all across Europe. Here in Germany, we have trails like this. And I would imagine, hearing what he did, I probably walked on some of the trails that he built in the Adirondacks and the surrounding areas. But I never considered who built and designed, well, really who designed these trails first and who built them. Fascinating. And of course, when you hear the story, you think, yeah, of course, somebody did this, right? And I never thought about this. So I thought this was fascinating. What were your big takeaways from kind of an entrepreneurial standpoint?
So my number one big takeaway was this is a great example of sort of inventing a business when you observe a need, uh, and plus taking his skills and expertise. Right, it's this great marriage of his 30-year career and understanding nature, understanding conservation, and all of those things that forest rangers deal with and have deep expertise in, and then applying it in sort of a different way to still preserve nature, but at the same time provide access. And there's this always constant tug of war between access and preserving nature. And I think he talked a lot about the great expertise that you need and understanding that when you're building a trail, how you can make it sustainable and how you can make it so that you're not damaging nature, and it's robust and it lasts a long time and people can access it. So I learned so much, right? I mean, there was a whole bunch of stuff he talked about. Yeah, that makes sense, but I didn't know about that. And so I thought that was really, really cool. The other notion of just sort of, I always thought about making a trail as, you get a handful of people together with shovels, rakes, and a couple of chainsaws, and you just go cut. Right?
Eagle Scouts. It was always the Eagle Scouts that were doing this in my town growing up, right?
Yeah. And that was sort of that's how it's done. But man, there's a lot of thought and design and knowledge that goes into this. And, how to design them, making sure you don't hurt sensitive parts of the land, and how to build it so you're not damaging you're not going in there with this huge bulldozer and just mowing everything down. And now sort of how do you maintain them? Because as these trails, you get a storm or people's, just like a road, after a while, it needs to get repaired. How can you go in and repair it? So I just thought those were interesting. I also thought that he really had some good thoughts about a career and sort of when to move on and do something new, right? There was some good philosophical stuff going on in there. And there was a couple quotes that really struck me that he said, a couple things he said. He said, believe in yourself enough to make your dream a reality. When he said that, I got to write that down. That was good.
Great.
Yeah. And the other thing that he said, I thought was really good. He goes, let the business guide you where it wants to go. Right. That was those are just two nuggets of sort of great advice for any entrepreneur, any business person, or just life in general, that I thought were really good.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe even just drilling down a little bit. I mean, he obviously had strong opinions, but I love the fact that he was bringing in kind of some different scientific kind of disciplines or ways of thinking. So he was talking about the physiology of the human body and how a human interacts with a trail, the psychology, how it guides what we look at, what we see, what we smell, what we feel, and how that guides our use of something and our appreciation of something, and the sociology. How do we use this as a community? What's the value of this? How do we make the most of it? Some of these things that he was talking about, I think, was really, really amazingly cool. That, you have to do your homework and you have to look at things from different perspectives. And sometimes the winners in life are the ones who can put together these different perspectives and integrate them into a unified whole. And again, turn this into the business. Right. And so, and do this in a way that he was able to make some money, you know what I mean? Right. To at least cover his costs. I get the sense as a retiree, he didn't need oodles of money for this, but you got to pay your bills and you got to make a little something, I think. So I thought this was really cool. So it's a great example of taking that passion. We always talk about this, right? But adding some value, not only for himself, which was clear, right? But also for the community, using, science and knowledge and integrating different perspectives and making some money all at the same time. So, I just thought it was a really cool story. I don't know. Any last thoughts on your side, Bela?
Yeah, I think as you were saying that, the other thing that struck me was, he talked about the difference between making a road and making these trails.
Mm-hmm.
where when you're making the road, you're trying to eliminate all sorts of features that the nature has sort of been, because, you want to have a certain pitch, can only be so steep, blah, 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 blah. But his job is just sort of the opposite. How can I take what nature has put here and sort of take advantage of it and incorporate it into the experience? So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Agreed. Really neat. wish them all the best. And definitely communities, if you're looking to do something like this, find Steve, or if you're not in that part of the country, find somebody like Steve who can put some thought into this rather than just slapping down some asphalt, right? And putting a few signs up and a trash can here and there and calling it a trail. There's clearly more to this than what meets the eye in order to really create value. So neat, a hidden gem. So anyways, what do you think? Should we wrap this up, Bela?
Yeah, sounds good to me, Mike.
Okay, we'll call it a day. So listeners, thanks again for yet another interesting experience. We hope that you joined us and found it interesting and thought-provoking just like we did. And of course, if you have questions about what we've discussed, please feel free to get in touch with us. Our email is bela.and.mike@gmail.com.
Hey, and if you like the podcast, please hit that follow button on your podcasting app. Spread the word, tell your friends about the podcast. And if you know of someone that would be a good guest for the show, let us know, and we'll talk to them and see if they'd be interested in being on the podcast. So until next time, signing off from upstate New York. See you all soon.
And from over here in Münster, Germany, we'll see you next time. Thanks, Bela.